I had addiction to pornography for a long time. And the reason why I had addiction to pornography, it wasn't because I didn't want to have a lot of sexual partners. I felt that instead of having all these sexual partners, I'd rather go out here and do it on my own. So the attack was on me full heartedly. Every day I felt like that's all I thought about. Instead of just going to God, I would just go to myself for different things, which led to the addiction. I had to go get counseling. To this day, I mean, I pray about it every day. And I thank God for the understanding that I can get through it, through any battle, especially addiction of pornography. So it's a lot of men out here who battle the same battle I battle. This is just one sexual demon that just is hitting a lot of men. And then it makes it even harder to just go online to just look at things because next thing you know, something that you don't need to be seeing and it sparks something in your mind. And to turn back from that is like, oh wow, why did this girl come online shaking her butt? But that's what they do because it's about views. It's about getting something out of a reaction out of somebody. So, but as a true Christian and as a man of God and a married man, I know I have to hold a standard for myself when it comes to my wife. So when I view my marriage and I view my wife, I view us as one. So why am I watching this and I know she's not watching this? So certain things I don't look at because I know my wife won't watch it. So I don't try to downplay it or anything in that nature. And then at the same time, you have to be okay as a man to be able to go to your spouse when you're going through those troubles because society is going to say it's okay to go. And even in movies, think about the movies that we watch nowadays. I mean, you see it full heartedly. Like I was watching, well, matter of fact, in video games, this is video game I love to play, right? And the very ending of the video game blew my mind. I told Audrey to blew my mind because this character, whole time I didn't know that she liked women. That's what was going on. It never depicted that to the end of the game. I beat the whole game, and in the end of the game, two ladies up here kissing. So they're putting out there for the kids. If you notice now, you got sexuality within even infant toddler clothes. They trying to this thing has gone to a point where it's no return. But we as Christians have to hold a value for ourselves to say, you know what, this may be going on in the world, but as a married man, this how I'm gonna hold my house down. So I look at it in the view of my wife. This me and her, we're one. I've been on this little fitness thing, man. I work out 4 or 5 days a week. Me and Aja actually started at the end of last year. And at my job, we have a facility, and I go up there and I work out. I do like 2 a days, and I call our trainer, and he'll give me like a little workout. So you know how it is. You go in the gym, you pretty much don't talk to other people. You just do your thing and you keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So, but as time goes on, you started seeing the same people. So eventually, you start talking, you start communicating, start figuring out where they from and who they work for, what division, department they work in. And there's one guy, he comes in the gym just about every day I come in there, a young guy, and we got to talking. Kind of find out he went to college at the time with the high school. Went to high school down in Albany, Georgia, which is in South Georgia. He went to Albany State, and I went to Doherty High. So here's a connection right there off bat. So we got to talking and whatnot, and it just one thing led to another. All of a sudden, we started talking about God.
Uh-huh.
We started talking about immortality, sex, and this, that, and third. He started talking about the issues he has with his baby mother. And I mean, when I tell you, I felt like God just walked in the room, like right next to me. And the opportunity was like had right then and there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, Kenny, talk to this young man because he need help. So I started speaking upon myself. I didn't bash him for anything. I talked about me and the stuff I had been through. And he was mind blown because now he's like, oh, I'm not in this battle by myself. So now it opened him up to even more dialogue with me and saying, you know what? I needed to hear this. I needed to talk to you about this because I didn't know if I was by myself. To feel this that I'm not here by myself and that somebody can actually talk to me about this. I said, man, you know what? This is an opportunity right now, Kenny. Get this young man number. We can talk. I said, man, hey, we can talk anytime. I said, man, my wife, she does a prayer call in the morning time. You could jump on the prayer call. We could jump on the call in the morning time. We do it Monday through Fridays. He's like, man, yeah. So I gave him the account and everything. And he was like, matter of fact, I'm going to call him up today and just check on him. But the fact that that opportunity was had means that people, they want help. They just don't know how to get it. They don't know how to seek it because they're not on here like we are. They're in a worldly aspect. He said his friends are still in the world. His friends still out there smoking. So look, like you said before, you are a reflection of like the people that's around you, right? So the same thing I can say even with me. I could be a shining light for my friends. Don't know when that's going to happen, but I know God is leading me to a direction to be more open with my friends. I have conversations with them all the time about certain things now that I didn't have in the past because I was afraid. The more I get, the closer I get to God, the more unafraid I am of things, conversations that need to be had, the things that I once did before I don't do now. I'm not who I am now that I was 10 years ago. 10 years ago is not Kenny now. Even a year ago is not who Kenny is now. So the change is in us. We have to change our minds, our mental, when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to the way that we do things on an everyday basis, how we speak upon things, how we talk to each other too as well. Because you just never know what somebody's battling. And in those battles, when it comes to sexuality and stuff like that, it's heavy because the world throws at you so much now. Commercials, advertisements, social media, all these things now is wrapped up in one. These kids nowadays don't go outside and play no more. They don't go outside and shoot basketball or play hide and seek and stuff like that. They're looking at things online. So that's why suicide rate has gone up within these kids because everything is by the touch of a hand. So if I can sit here and say, man, let me Google this. There wasn't a point in time back in the day to look at pornography when I, was dealing with the addiction heavily. I had to have a CD. I had to go put a DVR, a DVD in a player and play it that way. Nowadays,
and make sure the house was clear.
And make sure everybody was going.
Let's go on, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Not to trip y'all out, but truth.
It's truth to power to that. So nowadays, it's in your hands. It's so this right here is what kids are dealing with on an everyday basis. How many times have y'all gone into a concert, right? And all you see is lights. People are not actually enjoying the show no more. So like that's the same thing with God. People don't enjoy doing certain things because they think they can do it by the touch of a hand. So like as a true believer, evangelistic work is heavy. But you just never know who you might run into. You might be in a gas station and God say, man, I'm dealing with pornography in a gas station. That happened to me. No lie. I went to a Quick Trip gas station. We did some evangelistic work and the guy and we got the praying and something in my heart, God, he just looked like he was going through some things. And the number one thing, he said, I'm dealing with just my sexuality and stuff like and this and third. At that very moment, it was an opportunity for us to pray for the guy. And we did. We sat there and we talked to him. I gave him some gifts or whatnot. But I told him, man, you can get through this. Just have other people around you praying for you. I said, hey, here's a church you can go to. We do this all the time. Come up here and we got you. We're going to lock it down. So I just want to speak upon that. I feel like as a man, it's very important for us to be evolved because you see more women out here doing God's work than you do men.
Yes.
It's really important for the men to be leaders and do God's work just as much as the women. So it was always my grandma who prayed for me. I never knew how I got through certain battles. My grandma, my mother, they prayed for me all day, every day. I know for a fact that half the prayers that when I was about to go do something and I said, dang, I'm not about to do that. I know it was my mama praying for me right then and there saying she know her son. So, and even in my marriage, I got the most praying woman ever. This one right here. I promise you, she probably laying all on my forehead in my sleep.
You blessed.
Yeah, man.
Blessed. I do that to my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sneak up on my kids. I try not to sneak up on my kids because they grown, but yes.
Yeah. So for me, I know for a fact that I'm covered. Even in my battles and my thoughts, I'm covered because when I wake up in the morning time, those same thoughts I once had before are no longer there.
Yes. Yes.
The first thing I think about is reading my Bible and going to go use the bathroom, making sure that I pray to God before I even touch that floor.
And
Yes.
I was gonna touch on like if we have any other wives out there, Mario. I don't know if your wife can talk about it. I know Kenny's expressed like his struggles, but when you come into a marriage, and I know Sandra in the chat box, she's like, look, single people struggle with this too.
Yeah,
She's like,
heavy.
she's
Oh,
the truth. But like as the other person who doesn't battle that, it was hard for me because I didn't understand it. I was like, "What are you talking about?"
mm,
Like, I didn't get it,
Mm.
and he used to always say like, "Well, I think I'm addicted to porn, Asha," and I was like, "Well, what's that got to do with me?" Like, I did not understand how that stronghold impacted my life, but through as Kenny really combated that strong like everything because understanding like spiritual strongholds and so forth, they don't come solo. They're like I've had to like really study them and like they kind of partner up. So with when you're addicted to porn, okay, as a married person, now you have introduce like adultery, you're gonna you want that chase. Okay, now like there's other things that come along with that, then the sexual desire from your spouse, and then like
Mhm.
there these things aren't standalone. And so it's important also like in dealing with God's grace and those of us that, you know, maybe like Mario's wife, me as being Kenny's wife, of going through that, okay, you have to show the love of God. And like, to be honest, my relationship with God is what got me
amen.
through it with Kenny. Like, we went into counseling. We can be 100. And the first thing she said was like, "What do y'all want to do with this marriage?" Period. And I was like, "I'm just here because of God." And she was like, "Okay, can we get more out of that?" And she kept asking me for more. And I was like, "You don't understand. On my own, I would have been gone. But God has something for me, and I want to see it out. Whatever He has, I knew Kenny was the one. God kept telling me not to give up on him. And I'm like, what I see and what I believe are two totally different things. So I was like, Lord, only you can bridge this gap. And I kept telling her, I'm like, I'm here because of God, period.
Mm-mm.
And so it is hard to even deal with as a supporting person. Like Kenny said, I had to learn what it truly meant to do spiritual warfare. I had to learn how to intercede on his behalf. And I can even tell you, Kenny, look, your mama came over. Look, I can tell you now live in front of everybody. Your
Ah,
mama came over. She said, "Baby, this how you pray. You're gonna get that oil." She got that oil. She went to your side of the bed. She was like, "You put it on his pillow. We putting it all on here. Your mama and I prayed over you." And then I kept that going. So yes, you're right.
And
But
look, and the two got named was my mama and you. And guess what? The two people on my side of the bed pouring oil everywhere.
you're like, I didn't know that. She had to show it to me. She was like, "This is how I pray over my husband." Because you're right. Like understanding going into society and marriage, the idea of marriage has completely changed, not because of God, but because of man. The idea of marriage, the way it was intended, God intended marriage to be the unification of male and female, right?
mhm.
Becoming one in flesh, being able to reproduce and multiply the earth. We'll going back to Adam and Eve. And so now the idea of marriage, man and man can get married. Man and man can produce children now. Woman and woman can produce marriage. Woman and woman, like the idea of marriage is now attached to so many demonic strongholds, and it is completely a part of what God intended. So when you have godly marriages, like Kenny and myself, like Brother Mario and his wife. When you have godly marriage, you can bet your bottom dollar, Valoria, when it's time for you to get married, the enemy is going to try to attack any God fearing marriages out there because we are going against what society and the enemy has now portrayed as a healthy marriage. A healthy marriage is now as long as you're happy.
Preach.
Love is
Yeah.
love.
Love is
Preach.
love.
I
And
Yeah.
have to say this before I forget, but as you said that, it just reminded me of what we've been talking about all week. It's like perfect. It's like God has his way, and just like in the story of Moses and how they were trying to perform the same miracles, it's like they have their own perverted way. Like, you can get the same outcome, we can do the same thing, but it all starts from God. You try to take it and you create your own variation of it, but at the end of the day, it's not the same. At the end of the day, God's answers, God's responses, God's principles still prevail over all of those things, regardless of what the world wants to try to clone God to be as to fit into their own agenda.
Hey man, you speaking
amen.
that one's
Amen.
real. Like seriously, yeah, man. When you said clone, it's just like, oh my goodness. But see, we got to understand that's what the devil is wants to do. He wants to clone everything that God has already made because he wants to run rampant upon this world. He's like he's the serpent. He wants to go everywhere. He wants to be all over the place. But understanding God's word and what His word means, His word is bond. The
Mm-hmm.
devil is a liar.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Mm-hmm.
deceitful. He does things that we sometimes he'll throw us back. Like, wait a minute, whoa, dang, I know this comes from the devil. I like the thoughts that he try to put in your mind is those strongholds that you once had because he know there's a way to get in you. He finds these little crevices. But if you have God, if you have prayer, if you have the ability to get up and say, you know what, forget you, devil.
Uh-huh. Speak them promises. Go ahead, bro.
You don't have control of my life.
Go ahead.
You don't have control of my marriage. And I think that's because our marriages don't last long enough. People don't have faith in marriage, but faith without works is dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're
Hmm.
not putting the work in your marriage, like me and Aja would not have been where we currently at if we didn't put the work in. If I didn't, me personally, if I didn't decide to get up off my butt in my marriage and fight for my marriage, I don't know where I'd be at with my marriage.
Preach.
You
Thanks for
know,
fighting, Kenny.
Love
Thanks for
yeah.
fighting.
And
I
that's
love
it. But that's the same thing we have to do for God. We have to fight for God. These are the things that we have to understand. Like the fight is just it's within us. That's why we put the armor on. We go out here. We got a battle. We got a battle for God. And that don't mean going out there being boastful. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, when you fight for God, that means you praying, even in praying in silence. Might be next to somebody, you can see that they're going through something. You praying for them right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times you could be in line at a grocery store and somebody might be arguing. Pray for the situation because you never know what the situation may lead. I was in the bathroom with the young lady and she was going through a situation. And I just started praying for you. And all the girls in the bathroom, she comes on, she tells me the story. All the girls in the bathroom, they said, oh my God, you can pray. But you have that same capabilities. You have to believe in it.
Hmm.
So that's my
Amen.
little thought.
Hey, man. I love it,
Yeah.
young brother. Love it.
Oh,
I can't
I
tell
was
if
going
Tremaine
to
is
say
trying to say something. Oh, okay, he
There
is.
it goes. There it goes.
I see
Tanae's
the
like,
little
I've been
thing
trying to
blinking.
comment for a minute.
something. Right. I think that's like so amazing how you guys' story testimony of spiritual warfare. I and just pressing through with the spiritual warfare. That's something that I think every believer and every family needs to know about. I've actually unfortunately walked through that and I didn't have that outcome my first marriage. And just hearing that, just that there are people that do value spiritual warfare and fighting for what God has put in their life, and seeing that actually in the flesh, it's monumental. It's a very powerful testimony just alone with that. And it's like when the enemy does come, when you do have two believers that do believe, and Jesus said that he will be show up for his belief, he will be there, that does keep away the enemy. That does keep away the works of the enemy. That's why Jesus came to do away with the works of the enemy. So when you do have, like Valor and I, we read passages of scriptures, and it actually allows my mind to come out of a certain place into a certain place of believing what God is saying about these marriages, and believing in His power to heal and to fix and to mend and to mold. I went through counseling with my first wife, and I tried the whole nine, And she didn't come up for God. She came and she went and she left. There was no, I'm gonna fight for God. I'm gonna fight for my marriage. That was not the case. It was just the enemy was in it. The enemy took over, and that was it. In the church, we were actually believers in the church too as well. So just to see like the opposite of that and its full form and its full like manifestation is so monumental. I'm glad I'm actually here to see you guys and how what that looks like at a young age. Um, that's something that like when you have a basis of kingdom living, it's very important to teach that to your spouse. It's very important to show that to your spouse. Like even with that with spiritual warfare, like I was telling Rhea, I was trying to get her to understand her dreams and understanding about the prophet's dictionary. These are some of the things that combat Satan, that combat some of the schemes of the enemy. When we aren't informed, when we don't have information, that's when things can be used against us, like they say in a court of law, pretty much. Because that's how the devil treats it. He takes your faults, your smallest desires, just wanting to look at someone and or just wanting to have be held or just wanting to be noticed. He knows those desires. He knows what you are capable of. But when you have a praying woman or you have a praying man and someone who's actually there with you guys to get through those things, they actually you're protected from that. The Holy Spirit keeps those things at bay. He's the most powerful spirit on planet Earth. There's no spirit that can compare to the Holy Spirit's power here on earth.